This week on the Storycraft Society, I have decided that I'm going to paint a miniature. I guess because I hate myself. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin. This, of course, is the Storycraft Society, and like I said in the intro, every once in a while, like once every year or two, I get the urge that I want to paint a miniature. Most of the time I don't finish it. Most of the time I start it, I get it like 3/4 of the way done, and then I give it off to my better half, who is the miniature painter half of our duo. She finishes it up and then it makes its way to the shelf. But the good news is, this time I've got a YouTube video that is going to make me finish it. I am going to finish it. I am going to finish it. I am definitely going to finish it. The bug struck me, so that's what we're doing this week. You get to come along for the ride as I progressively get more and more frustrated, because anybody who has been watching this channel for even a very small amount of time knows that painting is my least favorite part of the crafting process. I love the building. The painting, other people can have the painting. I'll just take the building. But this week we're painting a miniature. Nothing else to say. Let's jump into it. Quick disclaimer, I am a terrible miniature painter, and the whole point of this video is to show that if I can paint miniatures, you also can paint miniatures. So, you can judge me, that's fine, I judge me, that's definitely what's gonna happen here. But don't think that I am coming into the internet with any claim of being an authority on this subject matter or anything like that. This is just to show that if I can do it, you can do it too, and hopefully some ways that I make it easier on myself that you can use and all that stuff. So, disclaimer done, let's get to the video. Okay, so step one in this process is to find a miniature that you want to paint. And I know that sounds simple, but for me, as somebody who doesn't really like to paint miniatures, that's a pretty important part of the process. I'm not one of those people that I see a wall full of miniatures and can't imagine any of them without paint. It's a special thing for me to find a model that I'm like, all right, that's the one that I'm gonna paint for the next few years. I came to the conclusion of this guy. He is from this Deep Cuts Viking set, and I will tell you how I ended up on him. The first thing I did was I pulled out 2 boxes of our Deep Cuts miniatures. Now the thing about these miniatures in particular is that they are cheaper sets. The miniatures in them don't cost that much. I would not even begin to think to pull out one of Olivia's display quality miniatures and try to paint that on a whim. These are basic, simple, pre-primed miniatures, and that's all I need. I need something that has a decent enough sculpt to paint it, but at the end of the day, it's not going to ruin the world if I mess it up. I really like these deep cut sets for that. The next thing is I started to root through them and pulled out models that I found interesting. This is a very subjective thing. Just find models that you get really excited about and that you could see yourself wanting to paint. That's another really kind of cool benefit to these deep cut sets. You get so many different varied models that you've got lots of options to choose from. The next thing is to narrow that down to the one. And I'll tell you, as awful as this sounds, the simple fact of the matter for me is that the simplicity of the model is what drove me to pick this one. When I looked at the other models, they had all of these belts and corsets and all of these little teeny tiny fine details that I know once the excitement of painting a miniature has worn off, it's gonna kill my desire to keep going. So I found the one that was one that I liked, but also that was very, very simple. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that, I don't think. I think a lot of people think that it's gotta be this, if you're not painting the most intricate model or whatever, then you're doing yourself a disservice or something, but I'm gonna finish this model today. And if that's because he's simple, hey, I still got another model painted, so, or a model painted. I shouldn't say another model like I've painted multiple. So, miniature selection, done. Moving on to step 2. Now these models do come pre-primed, but I am going to actually be re-priming them. I'll explain that here in a minute, but what I need to do to get that ready to be re-primed is take and put it on a plinth. This is just poster tack, and you can just push it on there. And then this plinth, what it allows me to do is hold it, so I'm not like putting my fingers all over the miniature while I'm painting it. This just gives me a little bit of a grip. This is just a piece of pipe that I made, glued a little cap of foam in on the end. This is one of Olivia's plinths. I'm not gonna use one of her good ones because, like I said, I have no skill at this. So this is that, and now I need to get it primed. And by I'm going to get it primed, that means I have someone for that. Can you prime this for me?
Yeah.
Now the type of priming that she did for this is what is called a zenithal prime, I think. Well, zenithal is right. It is primed in the zenithal fashion. I'm an expert. But what that means, simply, is that she goes over the whole thing in black and then sprays with a gray over the top. That gives it the appearance of light shining down on top of someone so that it is dark underneath in places where the light isn't getting to as much, and then it is brighter where the light is hitting it. Then the last thing that she does is she sprays with a off-white, so actually one step brighter, up from the top like it is being hit directly from the sun in the direction that she has her light source coming from. For me, I'm not a good enough miniature painter to want to do like object source lighting and being lit from below or whatever. What I want is a miniature that looks good on the table and it looks like the sun is shining onto their face, which is perfect for this style of priming. Also, one thing that is worth mentioning, I think I've got crap in my teeth. Actually, one thing that is really worth mentioning is that the types of paints that I'm going to be using to paint this model really benefit from having a zenithal highlight, because the paint is going to let a little bit of that light through and it's going to help to make a pretty mediocre painter ability look like a much higher quality painter. With that said, we now have it primed, and now it's time to talk about those paints that benefit from the zenithal highlighting. Now, paints like Instant Colors from Scale 75 and Contrast Paint from Citadel, these aren't new products that have just made it onto the shelves of the game stores of the world. But one thing that I do find frustrating, and this could be because I haven't watched all of the content that exists out there, is that it seems like all of the reviews for Contrast Paint and Instant Colors seem to come from sources of really ultra talented miniature painters that are seeing them as products that are to be used in very specific examples or for a certain type of thing, whereas someone like me would really, I think, get a lot of use out of them. So that's what we're going to be using in today's video. I have a whole selection of some things from Contrast, some things from Instant Colors. I actually have a regular Scale 75 Gold as well as Reikland Flesh Shade that we're going to be using on this model. Now, a little bit of a spoiler here. The first time I painted a model, I actually only painted a cloak, but with the Contrast paint, I was absolutely blown away by it. I mean, it's the type of thing that when I first watched Olivia use it, I said, this is the type of product that would make me want to paint miniatures. It's not going to make me the world's greatest miniature painter, but again, I have no interest in that. But if I do get the urge to paint a model, these paints make it so much more user-friendly, and at least for me, a total 100% noob when it comes to miniature painting. That's what I need to get me excited and motivated to go. But that's it. That's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to use this brush right here. It's got a pretty big tip on it. I hope that it's tiny enough to be able to do all these little details and stuff. But I'm going to use this brush. I'm going to use these paints. And we're going to paint a model. Let's go. Okay, so upon reviewing the footage, I realized that basically all of the close-up work that I did of the actual miniature painting is out of focus. So I apologize in advance that that's not going to be super easy to see. The good news is I'm terrible at this. So you're not really missing these amazing techniques that are going to be going into this whole miniature painting. Basically, all that's happening is you're not seeing the fine detail work of how bad I am at this, instead of getting to see it in 4K or whatever. Back to the video. Like I said, really sorry. Hopefully my close-up shots of the miniature, which are in focus, will help to make that a little better. So let's jump back. So I'm going to start by breaking out the Wildwood color. This is a contrast paint. And what we're gonna do, get a wet brush, grab some of the paint here, and I'm going to start applying it up underneath the cloak. Now the cool thing about this is, remember we did our zenithal highlight, so that means we don't have to be perfect with this because it's already pretty dark under there and it's gonna be hard to see that. That's one of the little benefits of doing a zenithal highlight. Now here's a little trick that I've found when you're trying to get into tight areas. You don't want any extra paint on your brush, just on the tip, the very tip of the brush. Just with paint on the very, very, very tip. I'm gonna go back in here and get the color that I need back behind his legs. Moving on. Now for the fun part, going over the big part of the cloak. Doing all those little tiny areas is the most infuriating part for sure. Here is the magic of the contrast paint. In basically one coat, the cloak looks pretty good. I mean, like I said, it's not like the most amazing thing I've ever painted, but dang, I mean, it looks pretty good for basically no skill or ability in this. Next up, I'm gonna pull out the Reikland Flesh Shade and I'm gonna put that all over his skin. Now this is a wash, it's not a contrast paint, but that's okay. Mixing all of the different paints over the model will just help it to give a more varied look. And in this particular example, the flesh shade will help so that the skin still reads as a paler skin tone, but it's not gonna get in the way of anything else. Gonna get that a little bit and start putting that all over his skin tone. Thing that's worth mentioning is don't be afraid to get a little bit of paint over other areas of the model. So for example, I got Reikland Flesh Shade all over his beard. That's okay, because I'm going to be covering that up with a darker paint here in a little bit. Next, I'm going to pull out Gore Gruntifer, and I'm going to do his boots. And then after I'm done that, I will move on to his clothes. Next, we're going to break out Gollum Gray. It is an instant color. This is going to be what I'm going over his entire cloak with. Actually, I said cloak, but what I mean is his tunic here. I'm going to take that, apply it the exact same way. Now, I was going to do Gray Spell, which is an instant color, on his pants. But what I'm realizing is as a model, he's starting to look pretty dark. I think he needs a little bit of color added to him. Now, I know that his head is going to be an orange because of his hair, which will help, I think, a little bit. But I think we still need to get more color on there than what we have. So what I'm going to do is pull out Life Red, which is an instant color. I'm gonna make his pants red. Hopefully they will be dark enough because of the zenithal highlight that we did that it's not gonna detract from his hair, which is gonna be, the main focal point of the model, but let's see. I think the next most important part on this model is the hair and the beard. So we've got to get that done before we can really move on to much else. I want to make sure I get all the orange done up there before I start doing the fur on his cloak because I don't want to get the orange on that. For his red hair, we're going to be using Griff Hound Orange, which is another contrast paint. Let's see how it goes. The next move that I need to make is actually to do his belt. And his belt is actually a little dark because I got a little bit too much of the Gollum gray from his tunic onto it. So what I'm gonna do is actually break out a white, and I'm just gonna quickly go over that area, let it dry, and then I'm gonna hit it with the skeleton horde. Next up is skeleton. Take the brush out of my mouth. Next up is skeleton horde over his freshly white painted belt. Also, switch to a smaller brush because I'm starting to get into the finer detail work. Now I want his fur on the top of his cloak to read as white, but right now we don't have enough shadows. So what I'm actually going to do is break out an Agrax Earthshade. Nope, that's not right. I'm going to break out a Nuln Oil wash, and I'm gonna go over all of the fur, and then once that's done to get my shadows, I'm gonna dry brush it up in white. I am now breaking out the world's smallest flat brush, and I'm gonna do some white dry brushing. Next up, we're gonna paint the two buttons or like clasps on his cloak in Elven Gold. So that'll be a next quick step. So after a few hours of painting, here is where we are. For only painting one miniature every 2 years, I am pleased as heck with this. I mean, really, really, really good for my skill level. And what I've done, painting with these paints is just so easy. And like I said, here's a model that's gonna jump onto my table. But the next part is basing. So once I get this guy based, that's where the model really can start to come to life, and it kind of hides this not super great paint job. But hey, I'm pleased. All right, so there we have it. I think the process went swimmingly, like way better than I thought it was gonna go. I thought I was gonna be a big ball of frustration by the halfway point and not get it finished. And I think that a big chunk of that comes down to just picking a good model. Know yourself, know what your limitations are, and then stick with them. For me, painting a really simple model allowed me to get the whole way through the process and not have to worry about being stressed out or frustrated by it. But that's all I've got for this video. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, definitely leave me a like down below, leave me a comment, and let me know some of your tricks for painting miniatures more efficiently, better, the way that you enjoy to do it, what I did wrong, what I could improve on. All that stuff is so awesome to hear down in the comments. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this video with a friend, because that goes a long way to helping a small YouTube channel out. And with that said, that's all I've got. So until next week, I'll be seeing you.